The night was heavy with rain, the kind that seemed to drown the world in silver noise. Jake's small roadside garage stood alone on the edge of the highway, its flickering neon sign the only light for miles. Inside, the smell of oil, wet asphalt, and old engines filled the air. Jake, tall and broad-shouldered, was locking up after another long day when the sound of screeching. Tires made his heart jump. A black SUV tore through the curtain of rain and skidded to a stop just outside his door. The headlights blinded him for a moment. Then the driver's door swung open and a woman stumbled out, clutching her coat tightly around her. Her movements were frantic, almost desperate. She slipped and fell to her knees, then looked up at Jake, her face pale, her eyes wild with fear. "Please," she gasped between ragged breaths. "Please don't hurt me." Jake froze, hands raised instinctively. "Hey, easy," he said in a calm, gravelly tone. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe here." But she didn't seem convinced. Her eyes darted to the darkness behind her, as if expecting someone to appear. Her hair clung to her face, soaked through by the storm, and her coat, once elegant and expensive, was torn at the sleeve. She looked completely out of place in this rough part of town, like a porcelain doll dropped in the mud. Jake took a cautious step forward, lowering his voice. "You're freezing. Come inside before you catch your death." She hesitated, trembling violently. You won't call anyone, right?" He shook his head. "Not unless you want me to." Something in his steady tone, or maybe the honesty in his tired blue eyes, made her finally trust him enough to follow. She stepped inside the garage, dripping water onto the concrete floor. Jake handed her an old towel and poured her a cup of coffee from his battered thermos. As thunder rolled outside, she wrapped her hands around the warm cup, still shaking. Jake didn't ask questions. He just waited. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain beating against the roof until she whispered, almost to herself, "They'll find me." They always do. Jake's eyes narrowed slightly. Whoever they were, he had a feeling this storm was only just beginning. The rain hadn't let up. It drummed endlessly against the tin roof, a steady rhythm that filled the tense silence between Jake and the trembling woman. She sat near the heater, still wrapped in the towel he'd given her, staring blankly at the steam rising from her untouched coffee. Jake leaned against his workbench, pretending to sort through tools while quietly watching her. "You want to tell me who you're running from?" he finally asked, his voice calm but firm. She flinched at the question. I can't," she stammered. "If I tell you, you'll want nothing to do with me?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Lady, I've fixed worse messes than you can imagine. Try me." Before she could respond, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed outside. Headlights swept across the windows. Jake saw two silhouettes step out of a dark sedan, men in long coats, scanning the area with flashlights. The woman's eyes went wide with terror. "Oh no, they found me." Jake moved fast. "Get down," he whispered, pulling her toward the back of the garage. He lifted a tarp off an old muscle car and motioned for her to crawl underneath. She hesitated, trembling. "Please, don't let them see me," she begged. "You're safe here," Jake promised, his jaw tightening. A loud knock rattled the metal door. "Hey, mechanic!" one of the men shouted. "You seen a woman come through here?" "Blonde, fancy coat?" Jake grabbed a rag and wiped his hands as if he'd been busy. He opened the door halfway, his expression neutral. "A woman? Out here in this weather?" "Nah, haven't seen anyone." The taller man narrowed his eyes. "You sure?" "Her car broke down a few miles back." Jake shrugged. "Guess she found a better ride." After a tense pause, the men exchanged glances and turned back to their car. The sound of the engine faded into the rain as they drove off. Jake waited a full minute before lowering the tarp. The woman crawled out, tears streaking her face. "Why did you help me?" "You don't even know me." Jake looked at her softly. "Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it either." For the first time, her trembling stopped. In the dim light of the garage, fear gave way to fragile trust, and for Jake, that was enough. Morning came quietly, the storm finally breaking into a fragile calm. The sky was still grey, but soft sunlight slipped through the cracked windows of the garage. Jake sat on an overturned crate, sipping his bitter coffee while watching the woman Emily sleep on an old car seat, wrapped in his jacket. She looked peaceful for the first time, though the faint lines of exhaustion still marked her face. When she finally stirred, Jake offered her a faint smile. "Morning. You got some rest?" She nodded weakly, brushing her tangled hair back. "Yeah, I think so." He handed her a plate with a sandwich he'd made from the small stash he kept in the mini-fridge. She hesitated before taking it, like she wasn't sure she deserved kindness. After a few bites, she finally spoke. "My name's Emily," she said softly. "Jake," he replied. "So, Emily, who were those men last night?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a trembling voice, she began to tell him the truth. "They work for my husband." Jake frowned. "Your husband?" She nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. "He's powerful. Everyone thinks he's perfect, a successful businessman, charming, generous. But behind closed doors," her voice cracked, "he's not the man they think he is. He hurt me, Jake, for years." Jake's chest tightened. He'd seen broken people before, but this was different. The fear in her voice was deeper than anything he'd ever heard. "He found out I was leaving," she continued. "I packed my bags and ran before he could stop me. I thought I could disappear, but he's got people everywhere. Those men last night, they weren't trying to bring me home. They were trying to silence me." Jake's knuckles whitened around his mug. "You're not going back," he said firmly. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. He stood and rummaged through a drawer, pulling out a small key and a folded paper map. "You do now. My cousin runs a diner a couple towns over. Quiet place, good people. Take this. You'll be safe there." Emily stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Jake smiled faintly. "Because once someone believed I was worth saving. Guess it's my turn to do the same." For the first time in years, Emily felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. A week had passed since that stormy night, the night that changed two lives forever. The garage was quiet again, filled only with the hum of machines and the soft clinking of tools. Jake was under the hood of an old pickup when he noticed an envelope taped to the garage door. His name was written on it in neat, careful handwriting. He wiped his hands on a rag and opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a small silver bracelet. The engraving caught his eye immediately. "You saved me." Jake unfolded the letter, and as he read, his usually steady hands began to tremble. "Dear Jake, I made it safely. Your cousin welcomed me just like you said. I've started helping out at the diner. And for the first time in years, I'm not afraid when the sun goes down. You probably think you just offered me a place to hide, but what you really gave me was something much greater. You gave me my life back. Thank you for seeing me as more than what I was running from. Thank you for believing that I could start over. I'll never forget you or the kindness you showed when I needed it most. Emily." Jake stared at the letter for a long time. A soft smile tugged at his lips, though his eyes were wet. He looked up at the cloudy sky, as if somehow she could see him too. He placed the bracelet on a shelf beside an old photo of his father, another man who had once believed in second chances, and whispered, "Guess I did all right, huh, Dad?" The rumble of a new car engine broke the silence. A young woman stood outside the garage, looking nervous. "Hey," she called out, "my car broke down a few miles back. Can you help me?" Jake grinned, tossing his wrench into his toolbox. "That's what I do best." As the sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light across the garage floor, Jake felt peace. He couldn't fix the world, but he could fix one soul at a time, and that was enough. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Channel name, Soul of Kindness.